They didn't go head-to-head, did they?
No.
They were apart with, I suppose, many would reflect Jeremy Paxman as being sort of the doyen of politics, really, in this country.
Yeah, tough questioner, tough questioner. So they both went in front of him, they both went in front of a studio audience, but it wasn't a head-to-head debate. The question of who won, of course, being answered to some degree by a poll that came out just after the event. You had it in your headlines. A Guardian ICM poll saying that 54% of those watching, according to this poll, said that Cameron won, 46% said that Miliband won. But what did we learn actually about any policy? I spoke to Mark Littlewood at the IEA, the Institute of Economic Affairs, before yesterday's debate, and he was saying there are still big holes in the deficit plans for both parties. So were we going to find any more detail? Probably wasn't the forum to be talking about deficits in detail, and certainly not welfare cuts. But that was certainly one of the lines of questioning with Cameron, was where exactly was he going to cut spending?
We've said that breaks down into 13 billion that needs to be saved in government departments, 12 billion in welfare, and 5 billion from cracking down on tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance. Now, when it comes to the welfare, we've identified, for instance, freezing in-work benefits like unemployment benefit for 2 years to raise some of that money. But the 12 billion, right, the 12 billion
10 billion of which you've yet to explain.
That compares with 20 billion that was saved in the last Parliament, in this current Parliament, by this government on welfare. So this is well within the range of what we can do if we continue with the sort of plans that we put in place.
Do you know where these cuts will fall?
We made 20 billion of welfare savings.
I don't want to be rude, but do you know and you're not telling us, or do you not know?
We know there will be difficult decisions, and we'll have to go through every part of the welfare budget.
So a bit more detail possibly to come on exactly where those cuts are going to fall. We'll look out for that during the campaign. Ed Miliband of Labour on the subject of Europe. This is where we got some, potentially some news. David Cameron has promised a referendum on whether we'll stay in the European Union. The Labour Party has not, but it's not quite such a clear-cut distinction as we heard from Ed.
Whether you want to tackle terrorism or climate change or a whole range of issues, we've got to be an outward-looking country. And so that's not my priority. Now, I have said, and this is unlikely to happen, but I have said that if there's a transfer of powers from Britain to the EU, a further transfer of powers, we'd have an in-out referendum. But it's not likely to happen. And look, that's what leadership's about. It's saying what your priority is. I don't want us to leave the EU, so why would I call a referendum in 2017 and plunge the country into 2 years of debate about something I don't want to see happen?
So it's not quite clear-cut. If there is a transfer of power proposed from the UK to Europe, then there would be a referendum under Labour as well.
So it seems as though from the first cut of it that Cameron's come out on top. What about the actual men themselves? Do we learn any details about their personalities a little bit more?
Yes, well, obviously, the criticism that's often levelled at David Cameron, you know, he's an old Etonian, he went to Oxbridge.
Bullingdon Club.
All of those caricatures are often painted by the media. So many people wanting to find out just how in touch he is with ordinary people. The questioning opened up along the subject of food banks, which is free food, basically, for people who can't afford to buy their own. And the other thing that that Jeremy Paxman chose to focus on at the beginning along these lines was 0 hours contracts, so that sort of job insecurity that goes with that type of contract. So he was asked, could he survive on a 0 hours contract?
But the point is, some people choose a 0 hours contract. If you're a student, for instance, and you want to do some part-time work, a 0 hours contract can work for you. That's why we haven't outlawed them altogether. What we've outlawed is exclusive 0 hours contracts. And no, I couldn't live on one of those.
On a personality front, on a more personal note, the criticism levelled at Ed Miliband is he statesmanlike enough? In the polling, he consistently comes behind David Cameron on suitability for being Prime Minister. So he was clearly, he was questioned on, Jeremy Paxman painted a picture of him in a room with Vladimir Putin, would he crumble? And he was trying to paint the picture that he could be a tough statesman.
Am I tough enough? Tough enough? Hell yes, I'm tough enough. The thing I've learnt most in this job, let me tell you, is to be yourself, right? That's what I am. And, you know, people have to decide. Do they want my ideas? Do they want my principles? When I've stood up to not just to President Obama, but Rupert Murdoch, the energy companies, the banks, fighting for ordinary people, which is what I believe in and what I came into politics for.
So in terms of that overall poll we started with, David Cameron won.
Yes.
There was a little bit of, maybe a glimmer of hope in there for the Labour Party, though, because when asked specifically about who would be best Prime Minister, 48% said Cameron and 40% said Miliband. And compared to previous polling, that's not such a big gap. So perhaps the Labour Party will be taking a little bit of heart from that one.
Interesting that he there name-checked Rupert Murdoch. And did you see the tweet?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, Rupert Murdoch coming out saying, thanks for name-checking me twice, but you embarrassed me with flattery last time we met. So, no, not holding his punches.
The papers also seem to be going with the view that actually Miliband was much more aggressive with Paxman, who's typically known as a very aggressive interviewer, versus that of Cameron. So it's all the nuances of body language and who's got the upper hand, or who has that moment.
And there were
with
two
Paxman.
formats. David Cameron went first. That doesn't play to his advantage. Also, he's the incumbent. That doesn't play to his advantage. But they both seem to shine in different environments. So the questioning with the audience, it seemed that Ed Miliband felt quite comfortable there.
Cameron did a little bit less than that.
Maybe
but then
David
did you see
Cameron more
Paxman sort of sitting back when Ed was sort of going, Cameron's just going, he just sort of sat back and went, huh, here we go.
Body language, yeah.
Anyway, there'll be a lot of interpretation. Anna, of course, you will dissect it all, I'm sure, in your politics show at 11 a.m. today.